Good evening and welcome to tonight's meeting of the Lake Bluff Public Library Special Topics Committee. I call this meeting to order on Monday, February 13th at 7 p.m. I'd like to start with roll call. Trustee Meierhoff.
Here.
Trustee Jerch.
Here.
Thank you. We do have a quorum, and we also have a community member representative on this committee. So Claire Abrahamson, excuse me, I believe I said that right. I should have. Yeah, Abrahamson. Claire Abrahamson, roll call.
Yes, here.
Thank you so much. All right. Due to some technology difficulties, Janie is unable to take minutes for tonight's meeting. Would anyone be willing to volunteer to do that for tonight?
Yes, I can do that. I can do that.
Thanks, thank you so much. Okay. With that, I'll just scroll down to the agenda here. Next, I'll move to.
Pardon me.
Oh, yes.
Sorry.
Kat.
So
Yeah.
absent are Matt Saudi and Bonnie. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
Sure. Next on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. I have a date change, well, two date changes. Janie had provided the minutes from the October 24th Special Topics Committee meeting in her document. She called it the Ad Hoc Committee. And then the November 14th Special Topics Committee, the Ad Hoc Committee. So both of those minute documents were attached to tonight's meeting invitation. I will share my screen really quickly here and start with, excuse me, wrong one. All right, so first, I'd like to open the floor for any suggestions or changes or edits to the October 24th meeting minutes.
No, Janie, good job.
Thank you.
Okay. Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the minutes from the October 24th meeting?
I so move.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. The minutes from October 24th, 2022 meeting of this committee have been approved. Thank you very much.
Was that Claire or Janie the second?
Janie second.
That was Jane.
Thank you. With that, I'm going to pull up the minutes from the November 14th committee meeting. Do I have any edits or suggestions or changes for the meeting minutes from this meeting? And hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the minutes from November 14th's ad hoc committee meeting?
I so move.
Do I have a second?
I second. I second.
So that was Claire seconding,
Oh, okay.
but thank you, Janie. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, motion carries. The Monday, November 14th.
Renee,
minutes.
did you get the ones that I sent you that were labeled a B&G meeting?
I
Did that
did.
come through to you?
Was that,
Okay.
that wasn't the ad hoc committee meeting though, correct? Or was that
Well,
labeled?
it was a combination. At the minutes, I realized that that was when we all went over to actually, we were in the building because we were moving stuff around and measuring tables and stuff. And so we had called it a building and grounds meeting because we were working on rearranging furniture. But Claire was also there. So it was sort of a group B&G ad hoc meeting, and I called it a B&G meeting. I probably should have
Understood.
put both of those. on the,
Like
but
a
that
combined-
was actually the last time we met. And that was right before, gosh, when was it? The 29th or something? Yeah, I found those late, a few minutes after I sent you the email with the two we just looked at.
It says this was a very informal meeting that combined B&G concerns.
Yes,
Okay.
that's the one.
If the committee would like it, I can forward you these minutes right now for review and approval.
Okay.
Claire, do you have access to review? If I sent you, if I forwarded you the Word document right now?
Sure. Just to my email, yes.
Yes, okay. Janie, thank you. I
You're
didn't
welcome.
understand that the first time it came through, so
Okay.
appreciate you explaining that. So we will have a third meeting minutes document to approve. No, that's great, getting it done.
We'll get it done. Yeah.
Is there a date on that?
The
I believe-
attachment is November 17th.
Oh, okay. All right, I see mine.
So then I'll give a moment to review.
So this was before our November,
It's right after the 14th meeting.
oh, that was the 24th, November 14th.
Yeah,
okay.
do you remember,
I
Kathy,
remember
that we
doing all this,
decided that
but-
we needed to actually go in the building and rearrange furniture, and that was
Yes.
what
Yeah,
that
I
was?
had the meeting, no, 1st November off date wise, so I got it.
Okay,
The first one was October 24th. The second one was November 14th.
14th,
And now
right.
this last one will be November 17th.
Perfect.
Thanks, Kathy, for
Yeah.
tracking that.
Did they ever
Kathy,
get
is that a
the,
Molly doll behind you on the bed?
It is. This is our guest room. Yes, that's our Molly doll.
Okay.
Renee,
Yes.
I don't know if you know this,
But she's
but
too young to
Kathy has
know.
a daughter named Molly.
Can you say that again? You broke up.
Oh,
Janie?
I said, you may not know this, Kathy has a daughter named Molly, so there's a Molly doll. on
Oh,
Are you familiar with what were the American Girl series?
The
which
American Girl
Molly's in
yes,
that?
I'm
Yeah.
actually not too young to not know. But I appreciate you thinking I am.
Well, that's Molly. That's Molly. right there.
Samantha was my favorite.
Uh, um,
Okay, any edits or changes proposed to the meeting minutes of this committee for November 17th?
No,
no changes or anything? I just had a question. Did we ever get privacy screens after all of that?
Not that I'm aware of, but
Okay.
that can be something that we discuss tonight.
Okay.
Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from the November 17th Special Topics Ad Hoc Committee?
I can motion to approve.
I second.
Click.
Thanks, Claire. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Um,
The minutes are approved from the Special Topics Ad Hoc Committee meeting on November 17th. Thank you so much, Janie, for writing all those up, and Kathy for tracking, and Claire for being such an important member of this team. Yes, so I'd like to quickly add an item to the agenda, which I forgot to add. Do we have any members of the public here who would like to share a comment with the board? Hearing nothing, I'll move on to the next item. Any additions or edits to the agenda beyond what has been sent in advance of the meeting?
Yeah, if you all don't mind, I think Jamie's got something to say. I'd like to make just an introductory comment.
Yes, we'll add that
since we have
ahead of
everyone.
the staff and patron
Yeah.
feedback section. So introduction. This is my first time meeting on the committee, so I think that's very appropriate. And Claire, I can add privacy screens to the agenda as well.
Okay,
under
yes, that's just been under
Any other
discussion.
business.
And I don't know if they're totally necessary, but we had talked about that they're pretty affordable solution to give kind of a backup security.
I've added that to our agenda after the, before the discussion of next steps. How about that? That's more appropriate. Okay. Any other additions or edits to the meeting agenda? I'll just say that I'll be reporting out for Matt since he is unable to be here. Okay. Hearing no other changes, I will pass it to Trustee Meierhoff for a brief introduction to this work tonight. Thank
Yes,
you.
So we don't have any members of the public with us this evening, but it's very, very often the case that members of the public take a look at the video of the meeting. So I wanted to just fill in a few things. So welcome if you are doing so. And I wanted to be introduced to Renee Grassi, who is the new permanent director of the Lakewood Public Library. Renee began her position on January 3rd. One of the reasons we've had a delay in our last meeting to tonight was because when Renee was being hired on or about the time of our last meeting, and we had set a hire date of a start date of January 3rd. So it seemed appropriate, since she would become the wing person on this project, to not have another meeting until she was here to direct us. So we're very happy to have her with us. And certainly anybody from the public who misses out or has a question can follow up with Renee going forward. I wanted to just go over a couple of the reasons we're meeting. We had an unfortunate episode at the library on October 10th. And we immediately pulled together a committee to really pretty much set up standards and plans so this would not happen again. We immediately reached out to the patron and family. We've learned that probably our outreach could have been improved, and we certainly will intend to do so in the future. We took several steps, such as discussing actually an understanding of filters on computers. There's different filters I've learned on adult computers, some not at all on children. As Claire just brought up, there are screens. So we're still evaluating all of that. And I think our goal would be to make sure that the public understands clearly what exists, what doesn't exist, and why. There's a lot of legality there. I also wanted to point out that we took immediate action against the patron who was abusing the policy of the library, and followed up with that action within a week's time for a permanent 1-year suspension, which will be reviewed. So one of Renee and this committee's duties will be to determine a review process at that time, so it's covered appropriately and ahead of time. And certainly people who are interested in that result certainly can be informed. Another thing we talked about was the location of the computers. Certainly that led to this incident. And so we immediately came together, and you heard Janie Jerch a minute ago talk about a meeting that we had on site, really literally measuring, moving furniture and elevators, doing everything we could do to find the best solution to the location of the computers. And we've done that. We did it quite some time ago. We'll hear tonight some feedback from staff to Renee as to how that's going. Also talked about possible signage representing behaviors and expectations, and also eventual policy changes. So policy is probably the big topic going forward. And I want to thank in advance Matt Saudi and Bonnie Shaw for their research and other community libraries, and they've shared with us and with Renee policies for computer use in the libraries. All of that will be gone over by this committee, Renee and staff, board review. I'm certain it'll be fit into the long-term planning going forward. So it's going to be a process. We'll do our very best to improve it immediately as best we can. fill the loopholes where they're needed, and then going forward, make sure we have a complete, accurate, policy that supports the library staff, the whole community. So we're real pleased about that. So I wanted to welcome you here tonight. If you just weren't able to join us, but you're tuning in. Again, if you have any questions, please follow up with anyone on the committee or Renee. And I won't take up any more of your time, but thank you for joining us if you're doing so. Go ahead, Renee.
Thank you, Trustee Meierhoff. I appreciate that introduction to the committee or everybody on the call. The next item on the agenda is staff and patron feedback of new location of public computers. Upon my appointment to the position, I was debriefed by Trustee Meierhoff about the situation, and I connected with staff to gather information about the move of the study carrels and the computers themselves to the entrance of the library, which is where they are located right now, on the first floor, right outside of the main entrance. And so what I'd like to do right now is to review a document I've prepared that highlights mostly staff feedback, but also patron feedback about the move of the study carrels. And so this feedback has been anonymized, both from patrons and of staff to support patron privacy, but I also want to highlight that all staff on the library had a chance to participate, either sharing comments with me directly or contributing to the staff blog, which is where they shared their feedback, reporting their own thoughts or and their own and what they've experienced with the patrons. So with that, I'm going to share my screen. One moment here. Okay. And this document can be added to the minutes, or I will share with you, Kathy, this document if you'd like to copy and paste in the minutes, however you want to reflect this portion of the discussion.
I listen in and then we'll attach it to the posted. And by the way, Renee, pardon me, but I also wanted to mention to the public that the minutes we previously approved will all be posted on the website, so anyone can review those at any time if they wish to. Sorry.
Exactly. No, that's a really good point of information. So what I've done here is identify the pieces of feedback in no particular order of importance or priority, but I did feel it important to address all of them to this committee, as I think then that will give us a wider look and scope of the opportunities, but also the challenges of the location. And so first we'll go over staff feedback. One of the trends or the commonalities amongst staff feedback was accessibility or just generally access to this location. We do, and I have observed that we have a couple of regular patrons who use those study carrels with mobility aids and devices such as walkers. And that is a more challenging location to make sure that there is adequate space for those users, while also making sure there's an open thoroughfare for patrons as they walk in. A lot of staff understand the location as it was decided and determined because it meets ADA guidelines. It has the appropriate tech support. It has excellent line of sight. In fact, that was commented upon by many staff often in this feedback loop, that they appreciate the line of sight. And it did not affect any loss of collection space. So I just want to say there is a very strong general understanding of why the decision was made, and those are the primary factors about making that decision. One other thing to address is cord management. There are people who use the computers who choose one side over the left because of the cords being kind of a disruption to moving the chair in and out of that location. So that could be a potential improvement. I mentioned that most staff did appreciate the improved line of sight. not all staff. So I just want to highlight that. Some thought that the carols interrupted the line of sight. But I think that's more about the welcoming of patrons as opposed to the line of sight to the actual computers. So staff understand and appreciate the improved line of sight to the computers, but the process of greeting people as you walk into the library, that becomes a little more interrupted. And then there are some comments about the decision to bring wood furniture in with some of the more modern aesthetic of that that furniture that's already there. Other comments here, some people understand and prefer the former location, but again, understand why this became a priority. And given all the options that were considered, this was the least worst option. This just lists the pros and cons. And a lot of them we've already identified, but I do want to again highlight minimal room for patrons with mobility devices. This I should have moved to the bottom, but patrons have mentioned that they prefer the privacy of the previous location. I'll go back to the rest of the patron feedback later at the bottom. And so there was some questions about the future design plans of the library, if the decision is still to move the location of the service desk in the future. You know, would we have an opportunity to rethink the whole design of the whole space? Aesthetically unpleasing, some staff feeling like they're invading on patrons' privacy because we can see their screens so well. But that may be just a personal issue, but again, understanding it's the best that we could do. Blocking the walking path, but again, best that we could come up with. Another comment about the future of the space design, or even considering a different table. And when we get to it, I can share that there's an opportunity for us to request from the Friends of the Library new furniture, and a powered table to replace the study carols is definitely on the list of considerations. And so that would minimize a lot of that wood that's segmenting the carols and offer a more welcoming, inviting atmosphere. And again, more support for the line of sight. Any questions or discussion based on that review of staff feedback?
This is Claire. I just wanted to say that all sounds really good and is a good summary. But I think when we were doing all of this with the relocation of the computers, we kind of were in the understanding that it could possibly be a temporary solution. It might be permanent, but it could also just be temporary. So I just wanted to make note that if there's ever a better spot that does open up, you know, we had talked about doing that as well.
That's great context. Thanks, Claire.
Yeah, and to that point, thanks, Claire, we should probably point out that in a space study done by for the library, I think in 2015, the recommendation from architects was to have public computers along the wall behind the current circulation desk, and have that circulation desk moved in front of the stairway below the signage that says Lake Bluff Library. So even then it was recognized as we needed a better place for the public computers. So I would agree with Claire that this is, and Renee's comment, this is the best, worst solution we came up with. So it's good for the time being.
Any final or any additional comments or reflections? Great, thank you. So I'll just share why this is much shorter than the staff feedback section. We haven't done any intentional surveying with the public. This is really observational feedback gathered from people in the community that have opted into sharing it with us. So we're looking at gathering this feedback through anecdotes. We haven't performed any sort of paper survey or online survey. It's really just through conversation at this point. Okay, and so the first topic really is kind of true throughout. We haven't received a lot of negative comments through the public or from the public. Most of the comments have either been neutral or just recognizing the change. I'll go over a couple of the comments that we have received in specificity, but in general, staff recounted time and time again that very little negative feedback has been received from the community, outwardly so in conversation. And so, as I mentioned, just some of the surprise of the change, you know, some of the comments have been, oh, you moved the computers, and a few people were wondering if this was because of the computer incident. So connecting the dots about the change with what happened last fall. But overall responses have been minimal. And I can appreciate nonverbals here. Staff have observed nonverbal communication from the public, which is less than favorable about the change. There were a couple of comments from this staff member that said they really only had, what did they say? 3 that I can remember, all older patrons, older aged patrons that have voiced that they thought the new location was a bad choice. One patron came to the desk to make a comment regarding how difficult and uncomfortable it is now to browse the movie section that is right behind the study carrels, being where they are now. Just because they mentioned the computers in relation to this. And then as I moved the comment from above just to say patrons have mentioned that they preferred the privacy of the previous location. And so a lot of this is that we have staff who work either full-time or part-time. We have a lot of part-timers who work in the evening during the day. These comments could have been received at any point throughout the day. And as I am gathering this feedback, it seems that the majority of the comments are from aging community members who use the library, as I've even observed in my first few weeks here, quite frequently and regularly as computer users. And so that is the summary of the patron feedback. Any thoughts, reflections, questions about this section? And I'll say too that what tends to happen with customer service and feedback is that if you're going to hear anything, you're going to hear the negative. You're not often going to hear the feedback from the community that either, you know, didn't mind the change, didn't even notice the change, or the feedback from the community that felt this change was a good one. So, you know, just in terms of customer service, we tend to hear when it's not working. So that I just want to share that perspective as we reflect on this particular feedback.
Yeah, Renee, just personal observation. I was in there yesterday or the day before, and the carol closest to the circulation desk, there was a cord extending well into the rite of passage, so I tucked it under the table. So maybe a little duct tape or something in there might be useful because someone could have tripped over that.
Thank you, Kathy. I have noticed the same thing. Yep. Any additional reflections, questions?
I just thought of one. I do remember there was discussion about aesthetically just making it look better. And those carousels were, you know, what we had, and they could be used. And they actually look much better than we thought they would. But I feel like there was discussion of ordering new ones or ordering something to make them look better, right? Like there was something with that, what aesthetic piece.
And that is, I'm glad you brought that up. So this is maybe a good time to say that I had a meeting with all the department heads and our full-time adult programmer who has a lot of feedback and help with our space design. What we did is we discussed the furniture needs of the library, kind of from a basic 101 level. What is it that we need? And I gathered all of their feedback and asked them what they would prioritize. And the number one thing that I'm hearing from staff is tables, not just the tables on the first floor that are losing the laminate, but the tables on the second floor, the actual long powered bar that people can plug into, the tables in that open reading section in the second floor, and then also the study carrels. So all of those items have been identified as furniture we'd like to replace. And as in a recent Friends of the Library meeting, there was a discussion about future donation requests. And there's a lot of interest in supporting future furniture needs. And so what I've been able to do thus far is identify the furniture pieces that we're interested in. And given the recent construction of the Stroh room that had a soft launch recently, and the aesthetic, just the general look of the furniture in that room, there's a lot of interest in adding additional tables in the library that match the Stroh room furniture. And what I like about that strategy is it gives us a lot of flexibility in the future for design. If all the furniture matches, regardless of where it is used, if ever any space planning or space design would change it, we could just keep the current furniture. And one of the ideas was to replace the study carrels with a power table. And so that would, again, improve the line of sight. And it would potentially even give us more electrical options for patrons to plug into using the laptop. And it would also align with the aesthetics of the power table that's in the Stroh room. And so that's what staff had inquired about. And I now am at the point of contacting LFI, who is the furniture distributor of the furniture in the Stroh room. And I just want to get some initial quotes, and then I will be back to the Friends of the Library for a consideration of a furniture proposal. So that is very much still the plan, Claire, and I'm hoping to be able to move forward with that soon.
Perfect.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up.
Yes.
Renee, a follow-up to that, that would be great. Picturing those computers on a table, I am looking at thinking of the back of them, which is never a good image of a back of a
Aesthetically, it's not your, the best.
Coming in. Is there any little, panel that fits over desktops, something affordable that could be used if indeed we are fortunate enough to have this donation from the Friends for?
Well, I think that's a really good question. I can certainly ask LFI about that. And I also just want to add that the computers we have there are laptops also. It's escaping my mind if there's a desktop companion, but the laptops there for the adult computers, those are what the Friends sponsored for purchasing.
Yeah.
So we may have a smaller footprint, as it were, on the tables themselves, as opposed to having that big PC desktop monitor from the before days. So I'm trying to remember what's there in that space, but I could certainly ask.
That always was that they found that the public preferred, even for, and thank you for the Friends, but after the purchase of and the option presented of a laptop versus the desktop, patrons were preferring the desktop, which kind of surprised me, but I guess that was the general.
Well, I think some of that might be just the size of the monitor.
Mm-hmm.
We could look for larger monitors that have a very small footprint on the table themselves that connect to the laptops, no problem. It would be the same type of setup that we currently have, where the laptops hook into the screen. And I think given the general age of the community, accessibility is something we need to consider all the time, but especially to make our computer and internet accessible. And laptops just have a smaller screen. So we could certainly look into that.
Good.
Yeah, that's great. Any other questions about the staff and patron feedback loop? Okay. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, Trustee Zowdy was unable to make it today, but he did send me a link to the research that he and Bonnie did. And let me pull this up on the computer screen for you all to see. Now, this is a Google Doc, and I do not have, it's Matt's Google Doc, so I do not have authorship rights to it, so I can't change too much, but what I can do is hopefully change the view, so you can all, and I will share a link so that members of this committee can review this after. I just received it this afternoon. What I just want to call to your attention on the bottom are these tabs here. So Bonnie and Matt reviewed what I understand to be 2 libraries' policies. Now, Aspen, the Cook Memorial Library District, Aspen is the name of their branch. They have multiple policies, as do we, relating to technology and the internet. So they highlighted and actually saved the wording from all of their policies related to technology. So they have the electronics policy, they have the wireless internet access policy, and then they also did some research on the general use of the library policy, because in many cases, and this is even true with ours, libraries have information about internet or general use of the library related to technology in the general guidelines use for customers when they visit the library. So there is overlap in terms of content. They also, while may not be completely relevant to our discussion in this committee, they did include the social media policy, but it's really important that we look at that. Oh, and then they also reviewed the Wakanda Library. They provided the wording for their general use policy, their online social media use policy, their technology use policy, and I believe that's the last one. So this is available. I will make this available to the committee members for review. I'll also say out loud that I sent an email to the committee members with a link of policies that I myself have been a part of in developing at my previous libraries here on the North Shore, including the Deerfield Public Library and the Glencoe Public Library. Also Glen Ellen when I was working there in the western suburbs. So they also had that information just as other reference and research to look at about what other libraries are doing in terms of policy for tech and for internet use at their library. Beyond that, I don't have anything else to share, but I'd certainly open it up for questions or comments or any questions we can follow up with Trustees Zowdy and Shaw, maybe to share with us another time. Any discussion?
What's the best thing to do next with all this information? I mean, we could spend hours reading policies after policy. You're the professional here and the experience. How do we get through them? How do we weed out similarities, find the best of the best, and apply it to our environment and our library?
Well, I think that's a good segue to the next item on the agenda, which is my own review with staff of our current computer use policy. I think that in my experience, every library has to create a policy that is most reflective of their community, but there are certainly best practices across public library institutions relating to privacy, security, and making sure that people have access while also doing the best of our ability as a public institution to provide a safe and welcoming environment for all. And so I appreciate Trustee Zowdy and Trustee Shaw's research, and I will also share a bit of my own with department heads right now. So we had a productive first meeting, I'll say. Anytime there is any sort of policy review, it's important for department heads to take time to review what we currently have, look out at what other libraries have, and several department heads have done that already in applying what they think to our policy. And then on top of that, I would just add here, this is where I would recommend a regular review of all policies. And I know that I've had that conversation with a couple of trustees already and looking forward to creating a schedule of policy review for all policies that we have so that we can be more proactive as opposed to reactive in terms of any situation that comes up at the library. And sometimes, like technology, the world changes so quickly. So best practices are actually to review your technology policies annually to make sure that they are relevant and current with the given needs of the community and the given technology advancements of the day. So we dove into this policy a lot, and I want to highlight a couple of things for the committee that we found. So currently the library has a use of library provided personal computers policy, and I'm actually going to pull it up right now for you so that I can reference it.
Could you repeat that, please?
Yes, absolutely. Sorry. The name of the policy is long. And so give me 1 second. I'll just pull it up right now. Financial, legal. All right. I'll just share my screen now so you can see where I am. So I'm on the website right now, and under policies, what I want to first review is the computer use policy. So the policy, its goal is to inform the use of library provided personal computers. And what we found in a couple of many areas is that this policy is actually mostly procedure. And I would definitely say that that is true when reviewing our policy and comparing it to the policies of Wakanda and Cook Memorial as well. There are certain things that a policy dictates for agreements and expectations for staff and for the public. And then there are procedures that can be changed on a regular basis to support changing technologies or changing needs among staff. As reviewing this policy, as I reviewed this policy, there is a lot in here that is no longer accurate with regards to procedure. And there's just some information in here that doesn't follow staff practice with regards to using the library. I would also say that it's very important for policies to be as accessible as possible. And I mean that by reading them. If this is an expectation that we have in policy for our community members, which it is, we need it to be readable. We need it to be understandable. And I don't feel that the current format does it in the best way possible. I think that there are some improvements we can make in terms of the organization of this information. In terms of its readability and length, certainly length, but there are actually areas of duplication throughout in this one policy. And I think I'm going to give this example. We are too specific in areas and too general or incorrect in other areas. So the main example I want to talk about today that I feel is especially pertinent to this committee's discussion is the bullet T, alphabet letter T as in Tom, about filters.
Yeah.
And so I'll give you all a minute to read this before I, oh, that was a little too close. Oh no, actually that's perfect. So it starts right here. Let me know when you're done. Let me know if you need some more time.
I'm finished. I just, this is about the filtering of the content.
Yes,
but,
correct. But it also, we use the word filters here incorrectly also. So I wanted to highlight this one paragraph as an example because there are always questions in public libraries. Do you filter? And what is it that you filter? And so I've done some research talking to CVI, Computer Vision Incorporated. CVI, that may not be correct, and I can send the correct wording to you, Kathy, for the acronym. But CVI is a company that we work with to provide computer management and internet management across the library for our technology systems. And one of the things that they manage is our firewall. And the reason I'm connecting these two things is that in some cases, we're referring to filters, whereas in other cases, I think the word that we mean to use is actually security measures, because filters address content, and a firewall is an example of a filter. But as you'll see, CVI sent me a full list of the types of topics that we filter on our adult computers, on our kids' computers, and then things that we don't filter at all. So I'm going to share this next document with you all. Once I pull it up on my screen here. Okay. And I just really appreciate CVI sharing this information with me as quickly as they did. CVI is a reputable company that manages technology, implementation, and security across libraries around the Chicagoland area. Now, they sent me a list, 8 pages long, about different types of content that our brand new filter, and we just implemented it, and they just finished implementing it within the last month, and the bill is forthcoming. This new filter has the most up-to-date security systems to avoid on our computers, to avoid malware, spyware, and things like that. But the library can determine what topics are filtered out as well. And so what I want to highlight to you is that all the text in red is blocked for all users, and the text in orange is blocked for youth computers. So I know there were questions about what do we filter on the youth computers? And this, let's zoom in a little bit more here. These topics here, as identified by CVI and the filtering software that we have, these are filtered on our youth computers. So the topics on the left and then the descriptions on the right. So our youth computers already have an additional filter for these topics. Scrolling down a bit.
I'm sorry, one more time. These are youth computers.
These are youth computers. The orange is blocked for youth computers. So gambling, lingerie and swimsuit, nudity and risque, other adult materials, and pornography. So these are what's currently blocked for our youth computers.
Can you provide me this document to attach?
Yes.
To the minutes? Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We already had so many documents, and I wanted to provide a walkthrough of the documents too for everybody as we were reviewing them. So I just want to mention that anything that is black is available to be searched, is available, and a lot of this falls under intellectual freedom and access to information that we hold as values, not just at Lake Bluff Public Library, but also through the American Library Association, which is stated in our policy. Freedom of information, essentially. So I'm still scrolling, but I just want to share with you that the first red item that I've come across is domain parking. And this is frankly very specific type of online content that people create as placeholders for future content. So it's just weeded out because there's no content on there. So it's essentially not included in any of the search terms, but it's out there. I mean, think about all the websites that could be created and people just purchasing domain names for themselves to use for the future. So they've weeded out all of that content. Now, the next item I want to highlight here is orange again. These both are orange. So these are blocked for the youth computers. And that is the explicit violence category and the illegal or unethical category. And an example of something, a website that would be unethical are the ones that are identified in search engines as fraudulent or potential for scamming, just to give more definition there. Kathy, let me know when you're.
I'm good. Could you tell me what the significance again of red is?
Red is blocking of all users on all of our computers.
Okay.
Now, here is where we start seeing more red. But I'll share with you again, the majority of this is related to security. So you're going to see technology terms here. And one of them is the proxy servers. There are some websites out there that will, their main goal is to ensure that your IP address cannot be tracked. And so they take your information and they route it through their system and provide you a new IP address that is not related to your information in real life. And that's what proxy avoidance is. And this entire category is security risk. So we're talking about malicious websites, we're talking about phishing scams, we're talking about spam URLs, even something like newly registered domains, that can be potentially a security risk. So websites that are newly created that haven't been on the internet for that long, maybe they don't have the security that is needed. This firewall is able to identify those things and can filter that out. But what this category does is it ensures that any internet searching done on library-owned computer and devices is done safely and doesn't put us at risk for a virus or malware or spyware or anything like that. So this entire section here is security risk. And again, this is all blocked by all users. And then there's the unrated category. So I really thought this was an important piece to cover as part of this committee's research because it relates to information that's been asked of us by the public. What do you filter? How can you not filter XYZ? And so there is something in our policy currently that says filters will be removed by staff at the request of any user in the discretion of library staff. I asked about that. I asked staff, okay, first, does this happen? How do we do this? And can we do this? Staff had not been asked to do this at any point, and this cannot happen in a moment notice. This requires a CVI ticket to be placed. It requires CVI to identify which computer. It requires time. It doesn't happen immediately. And so that was one area of the policy that we realized, okay, this is not, it's not actionable by staff. It's not possible to have this expectation. And as you look at the other libraries' policies, that is not an expectation that the library is put under, that the public can request the filters be removed. So this is a long-winded way of getting to the answer of your question, Kathy. What do we do next? I think we've only really started. And what is important about a policy review is that it's thorough. And the last time this policy was up to date or even edited or changed, let me double check, January 21st, 2020. That's actually not that long ago, but I think that the staff and the board have more information than we did at the time. So I think it requires really a thoughtful review of the policy. So as we think about going back to that paragraph again, the word filters, we have to define what that means. And you all saw that we do not filter adult content. We do not filter adult computers for content. So perhaps the sentence is, the computers in adult department do not have filtered internet content in them. And you will see other libraries stating that very clearly as an expectation in their policy, that they do not filter content for certain computers in the library, if that's true. And if we do filter content, then we need to say that for which computers and for what. The last thing I'll say in kind of my overall overview of policy is letter T again has a sentence about what the parents' responsibilities are. And I think that there are opportunities to clarify specifically what the role of the parent or guardian is when managing their child and using the library and using the materials. For example, letter T says, parents and legal guardians are urged to discuss appropriate and safe use of the internet with children in their care. But it doesn't talk about the role of parents when they bring their children to the library. Just like we have an unattended child policy, I think it's called the Safe Child Policy, to make sure that parents and children stay together when they're in their building. I think that we could consider something proactive that talks about the role of the parent and what's the role of the library. So I think that I think there's a lot of work to do on this policy, and I think it would be appropriate for the committee to recommend a full and thorough research and review and update of the policy as a result of this committee forming.
One addition to that, or question, in the last 12 months, the board approved a policy for unattended children to be allowed in the library. And there was an age, 8 or 9 years old and above, children could come to the library, spend time without an adult supervising them. So I had a little trouble with that policy, but it was approved for a lot of good reasons, I'm sure. What I would want to do is revisit it and make sure that it's clear that upon giving children that permission, the parents are aware of their responsibilities, whether they're in the library or not. And hopefully the policy does state that. I don't recall, but let's make sure that it's clear. And I think we're in a community where children should be safe to go to the library and spend time there and then walk home. We want to make sure that it's clear in every possible direction that they're being as safe as we want them to be, and parents accept that.
I think that is a really apt point, and I also think that it talks about how these policies go hand in hand, and one change may affect or can influence another change, or at least a review. So I've shared that policy on the screen right now. It is under the age of 8, must be accompanied by a parent or guardian who is at least 14 years old. So the idea here is that a 14-year-old may be the guardian for young children in the library. And that could be the case because 14-year-olds might be babysitters. And I think that there's often state statute that identifies what age a child can be when they stay at home by themselves, and how old they can be when they are taking care of another child in the home. Often that is through public health or DCFS. So I agree. I think that it's important to review this policy in combination with the other. Currently, the language says parents or guardians are responsible for children in their care and are expected to provide appropriate supervision for children under 8. If a child under 8 is attending a program, they must be in the building. But if the child is over 8, they can be in the library independently, but are expected to follow the library user conduct policy.
Good.
There, just to your point, Kathy, we don't state anything about, computer usage or anything like that. There might be an opportunity to improve this
Yeah.
wording and be more
Yeah.
specific to your,
Well, the big draw with kids is technology always, so it's going to be something they're interested in doing.
and on their own devices as well. And we have even less security influence over people's use of their own devices. And that can be in the whole of the library as well. Agreed. Any other questions or reflections there? I know I threw a lot at you.
No, this is very interesting. Thank you. Renee, if the board were to recommend first of all, the committee and then to the board recommend a review of all, let's just say all technology policies, what is the time frame you would expect to accomplish that task to your satisfaction?
So in looking at other libraries that have regular schedules of policy review, typically libraries and similar institutions review at least 2 to 3 policies a year. At least that's what I've been exposed to in my previous libraries. Especially those the policies that are quite long and lengthy, like collection development policies. That is a lot of undertaking, and oftentimes that's the only policy staff are working on that first year. So just giving that that foundational information. We'd have to identify which policies we want to address. I think there are at least 2 technology policies, if not 3. Let me share my screen one more time and show you the names of the policies here. Excuse me one second. So I would definitely recommend, let me zoom in if I can. I don't know if I can on this. The wireless network usage policy, absolutely. And I think for the reasons you identified, Kathy, there's an opportunity to talk about the Safe Child policy, because that's about what we can ensure in terms of safety in the building and what being in a public library is. I would also recommend reviewing the library user conduct policies. This is the general policy that we have that that provides expectations for all library users in terms of what they can and should not do when they're in the library. And this does talk about suspension and limitations of library services. So that would definitely be relevant to the discussion and the work of this committee. And I would also recommend the, where'd you go? Of course, the computer use policy. I think that's 4, I think.
I picked up wireless usage network, library user conduct policy, computer user, the one you just quoted.
And Safe Child.
Safe Child, okay. Yeah, that's a lot.
So how long? I think these should be done together. The work of research and rewriting should be done together and in collaboration with the library committee for the bylaws and policies. I hesitate. 4 to 6 months might be appropriate.
I don't want to tell you. I'm just.
Yeah, I
was thinking lengthy, sure. So.
Yeah, I'm thinking 4 to 6 months because there is that just general feedback loop that is needed too. There's the research between staff, and oftentimes when there's a policy review, staff will take the brunt of the work because this reflects, the operations of the library. And then that is communicated, the recommendations to the board, but also information about the process. What did we do in this research process? What did we look towards? Why did we recommend what we recommended in terms of changes? And then there's often, board feedback at the committee level, and then the committee is comfortable at some point with this policy, and then it goes to the board. So I don't think, yeah.
The reason I ask and bring it up is because I would want the public in particular to understand the process and why, because clearly we would all like to have the most up-to-date, safe and reasonable policy in place, but we have to recognize the amount of time we're committing to that to have the best. So thank you for pointing that out.
Absolutely. And I think this is work. We don't currently have a schedule to review policy, as I mentioned earlier. That is something I absolutely would like to prioritize for us. And it only makes sense that the first initial policies that staff and board review are these policies, if that is the recommendation of the committee. Any other questions or comments about the policy review that staff have undertaken so far? Okay, thank you all. The next item for discussion was added per Claire's recommendation. Let's discuss privacy screens. And so we added that just this evening. Claire, since I'm new to the committee, would you be willing to kind of give a quick overview of any discussion that's happened prior to today about the privacy screens?
Sure. Yeah, it was really just basic. As we were researching, talking about security options, we just brought up that would be kind of a backup thing to have in place, and they're very affordable and easy to install. And yeah, that was it. Just that we would have that in place, possibly in addition to anything else that we're doing. And that was it.
Great. Anything to add, Kathy or Janie?
No, I'm sure that covers it. Just that it seemed like the simplest thing to do and would work.
Yeah, I believe so too. I don't know, was Katie going to look into what was available and find the cost? I don't know if that.
I'm not privy to that, but I definitely can prioritize this myself with me here now. And I can share an update with the committee via email. And if you all, if each of you individually support that, I mean, we don't typically with a computer screen, that's a supply and equipment that library can move forward with purchasing on our own if we deem so necessary. But I think that the fact that this committee has recommended that to move forward, at least identifying that as a possible solution to some of this, I think that's appropriate.
So
We're not talking about a lot of them either, are we? I'm sorry, Kathy.
No,
It's just the two that are there in the carols. Right.
As
Would
far
be
as
the
I
only
know,
ones that
I
you'd be
wasn't
looking-
here when it was discussed, so I can't speak to that, but it makes sense that it would only be those two.
Yeah.
So they're in place so that people walking by won't see anything objectionable. Do they prevent the staff from observing what's being seen on the computers?
Yes. I mean, it's the same idea. Having worked at libraries with these privacy screens, from certain angles, you can see the content, and directly in front of you, you can see the content, and that's how the laptop is situated, and that's how it will be situated. So only the user themselves. But as you start to veer to the left or to the right, or from far away, above or below, it distorts the image. And so what libraries typically do, which our space is rather small, so it doesn't require this, but larger libraries, staff do regular walkabouts on a half hour or an hour interval. And they will walk around the library, just offer help or assistance. And it's also an opportunity to check in on usage of the computers or the devices. That doesn't prohibit anybody from closing out anything that they were looking at, but it just, again, makes our presence known. So in that space, there's really not a ton of room to walk about without it being obvious that we're peering in off over their shoulder. And then there is the other element of patron privacy. But to your point, Kathy, it would inhibit us from being able to see, probably most likely from the desk.
What's more effective, having you not be able to see from the desk or blocking the passerby? What's
Well, with the location that's currently identified, the passersby don't have a lot of visibility to those computers. Now, if we were to, and I think a lot of that has to do with the study Carroll design of the table. There are those big, large pieces of wood segmenting the different tables. Now, as we consider moving to a more open design of a table that has power, but no segments, then we want to reconsider that type of approach and consider the screens at that point. At least that's what I would recommend.
Okay.
We could always do some testing, purchase one, see how it works. That could be another viable option.
they're pretty cost effective, right? I mean, they're not.
Yeah, as I haven't researched it, but as far as I know, there are different types of models. I mean, there's kind of this like visor effect where it's like over, which I wouldn't want to do. But it also could be as easy as like a film that you put over. And CVI, our computer and technology service, I would definitely start with them about whatever it is that they recommend. Because they work with, dozens of libraries across the area that may have these installed in their computers. Anything else about the privacy screens? Would you like me to move forth with, oh, go ahead, Claire.
I almost think that if they're going to block the staff from kind of monitoring, I would say to go against that, right?
And there's some other unintended implications of this too. So for example, if you have an adult using the computer, maybe they're a teacher or a tutor and they're sitting next to a child. And for whatever reason, the computer's downstairs. I don't know. You just have two people at the table. Something like that they're really functioning to be for like the one-on-one user, not necessarily people that are either using computers together, because that's what I see. There's a couple that comes in oftentimes using the computers together.
Right.
Side by side. It does disrupt that type of access in computer.
Right. Yeah. I mean, they're removable. They're easy to put on and take off, but I don't know. It's just another layer, I guess, if someone wanted it.
Kathy, Janie, what do you recommend?
Wow, it's just, the unintended consequences thing always comes to mind when you do something like putting a screen meant for just one user on the screen. Do we want to? It's between how much do we want the librarians at the desk to be able to monitor what the patron is viewing versus how much do we want to give the patron privacy to view whatever they want to view. And so
and that's the balance, right? And I do, having worked the desk now 3 times since my training, I do appreciate the location of the computers. This is my personal feedback. I do appreciate the location of those computers because it provides such great line of sight. And honestly, I don't know if another intervention is needed at this point. I think in some cases less is more with balancing the needs of the community, and who knows the different reasons or needs for accessing. But even the temporary potential temporary move of the computers in this location, I think that has helped avoid circumstances like the one that happened this past fall. I think that's a good change for the library. And if there's ever any future design changes, we will look at that holistically. We will not just consider, okay, what is best for the staff, but also what is best for the community. What gives the patron their right to privacy and using the computer and accessing, credit card documents or tax forms. There's so
Exactly,
many
that's-
reasons.
Mhm.
Go
I
ahead,
don't
Jane.
mean, go ahead. No,
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that for if somebody's doing something confidential, just like you say, working on a tax return or working on bill pay or whatever. I don't know why you would do that in the library, but
If they don't have internet
it's
at home, people do use the computers
that
for
could
online
be.
banking.
Yeah,
My grandpa does
yeah,
that. He
okay,
lives in
okay,
Illinois.
well, it seems to me that really the reason that we want to have what's on the screen in view of the people at the desk is to prevent from viewing any objectionable images, i.e. porn. For any other kind of confidential information, you're going to be able to see that there's something on the screen, but you're not going to be able to walk away with somebody's social security number or something from that distance, unless you've got really good eyes. So I think, to my way of thinking, I don't really feel like it's necessary to put any kind of a screen on right now. I think we've taken care of the problem we were trying to solve by the move we made. And I don't see that we need to do anything additional unless or until we have a rearrangement.
I'll add one more scenario to this list, which is just staff help, customer service. Someone's having trouble with their email. A staff member goes over to the computer to help them with their email and points to different places. We
Yeah.
get this question a lot. Troubleshooting regular computer troubles. Or how do you
Exactly.
access this website? How do I download this tax form? Well, you go here, here, and here. Then we're starting to encroach on their physical space if we can only see from a certain line of sight.
Exactly
Anyway,
right.
our computers function in a variety of capacity. We're not a large library that has rows and rows and rows of computers for individual use. We have a limited amount. And so that means we have high schoolers doing their homework. We have, older adults doing their email, and there's just such a variety of use on those computers.
Yeah.
Well, it kind of seems to me as though we feel that at this time, the screens are not particularly necessary. They're obviously very easily accessible if we need to get them. But for the time being, we could hold off, I think. Several months ago, we really were concerned about, protecting images and so forth. But it sounds like so far this is under control, better control.
I would
That
agree.
would-
Agree.
Yes, for sure.
Right. Then staff will table the privacy screens for now,
Sure.
and we will revisit if at all in the future if need be. So the next item on the agenda is our last item before we adjourn. It's discussion of next steps and reporting out about committee work. Kathy, I know you and I have talked a little bit about this. Do you want to start by sharing any ideas that you have?
Well, I'm going to defer to you because you and I have tossed this around, but you've talked
Okay.
to staff as well. So you may be able to, I think we've done a great job with policy at this point.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
So I think, in my experience with committees that are not standing committees for the board, there's often kind of a summary of work that is developed in writing to identify things like what was the goal of the committee, or the reason for the formation, what were the goals of the committee, and then what was the work accomplished in the committee, and then at the end, a summation of those if those goals were achieved, and what work was completed. that's often issued and then provided a summary to the board and all interested parties. In this case, I would recommend, this report, I'll just talk about it as a report as a whole. This report be shared with the patron, and then also be shared as we would our meeting minutes, as we would transparently with any of our documents. If this was a financial budget report, we would include this in its entirety, potentially in a board packet. But I would also say it be sent also to the community resident whose children experience this. And so that would be my recommendation. And then any recommendations that this committee has to the board and or the library for future or continuing work, that be included in this report too. So for example, this committee could make a recommendation to the board and the staff for prioritizing the review of those 4 policies over the course of 4 to 6 months. That would be appropriate. But I think it's looping back to staff and the public about the work of the committee in a transparent way. And then also setting goals, if any, for continuing any work of the committee in the future. What do others think about either that or other ideas for reporting out about the committee work?
I think that's great. I would actually think or consider this document, this report, also being forwarded to the village and the schools, because and to the park district, because everyone's dealing with children and everyone's dealing with technology. And everyone in the library, in the community, filters through the library. So it's important to them to know. They know that we've had a troubled few months, and they would want to know how it's resolved and how we've worked with that. So I think that would be parties included in the reporting.
I think that's a great recommendation. And also just to communicate what the library offers in terms of internet, in terms of access, even a summary of what filters we have, what we don't, a general statement of access, of what that means at Lake Bluff Public Library. I think that really only helps our stakeholders communicate and know to their own colleagues what the library offers.
Claire, would it be useful to direct this to the friends as well? If Claire's not there.
Sorry, I couldn't find my button.
Well,
Did
okay.
you ask me if you wanted us to or direct us towards the friends as well? I think so.
The final report,
Sure.
yeah, because they're very involved in the donation, the very generous donations, a lot of the things we're talking about here. So
Yes.
Yes.
I'm sure we're there. I think they're a stakeholder in this.
Yes, that would be great.
Janie, any reflections?
Oh, I think it's a good idea to be as transparent as possible, and I believe what we're talking about is the right way to go. I'm just curious as to what it sounds like. We're going to make a recommendation then that I would say the bylaws and policy committee start looking at some of these things. In obviously, tech has already done some dives into computer policies. So I'm wondering, for this particular committee, it was called ad hoc because it was going to be only convened when necessary, when something came up. So I'm not sure, until something else comes up. It seems to me that we've done a pretty good job of dealing with and knowing what we're going to do in the future now. Dealing with the issue that came before us, actually 2 issues that came before us, the request for reconsideration and this other computer incident. So do we really need to make plans for our committee in particular moving forward? That's my next question.
That's a good point, Janie. And actually, for everyone's information, we are now called a Special Topics Committee that had ad hoc. We had an incident, a different incident a few months ago. It was the first time something like this had come up. So an ad hoc committee is provided for in the bylaws. So we set up an ad hoc committee, and then kind of left it out there to, kind of stew. And then, of course, we fortunately had it to call upon for this situation. So we have opted to the Special Topics Committee. But I think Janie's got a good point, Renee, based on your suggestion of a summary report, the goals, the reasons for meeting the goals, what has been accomplished, and goals going ahead. This report could be stage one of this process, with stage two being the policy review. But in reality, this committee, it may be considered that we've done our job at this point. Now, obviously, there would be recommendations to the board for that approval of that, and then follow-ups. But the follow-ups would be to the board and through the tech committee and all that. So
Exactly.
it would be that this committee may have sort of done its work. Otherwise, we'd just kind of be checked. I mean, I'm happy to do one way or the other, but in reality, we've gotten a lot done. We're at the point now, I think we agree with, there's a big job ahead of us. And as I said before, I think we can justify that is something that just can't be done quickly. It's going to be done well and take some time. But the committee itself I think we've met the requests of the public as well as ourselves and the staff. So I don't know, thoughts on that?
I would just say, I mean, not having been here since the impetus, I can only speak to the board meetings I've watched and the minutes I've read and this meeting now, but it does seem that the purpose of this committee, the Special Topics Committee, and the goals that you've set out for this particular topic have been accomplished. And so what I would recommend then is a motion. I think that this requires potentially a motion to move to the ending of this Special Topics Committee pending the work on the report as described prior.
Should the report be done? Should that be the one last task of the committee, is to complete the report?
Right. And that's what I'm sorry, I flipped those two things. The report completion should be first, and then the committee can culminate.
Yeah.
And you may decide not to meet again, or maybe you do. So that I would defer to the three of you if you think that this committee needs to meet again.
I'm thinking I'd be happy to work on the report. We'll have to figure out a plan for that, but I think putting that together and then meeting, especially because Matt and Bonnie aren't with us tonight, I would hate to just bring this to a close without consulting them. But coming up with a report, which can be brief. I mean, it's just capsulizing all the different steps that we've gone through tonight, and then calling a conclusion is that a review of policies, and then a report to the full board, and then reports to other village stakeholders. And so that would all be recommended in the report. But I think the report should be complete before the committee ends its work.
Yes, we're saying the same thing. Yes.
Good. I don't think it should take too long to do a report.
I'm right there with you. I think we have all the information we need. It's just a matter of putting, pen to paper, as it were. Happy to help support however you need in the completion of this report.
Okay. All right, so perhaps we should have a motion to prepare a report reviewing the goals, the reason for the committee, the goals of the committee, the work accomplished, and the future work to be done. That will be completed by committee members and presented to the next committee meeting or by email. We'll make that presentation as necessary, which will call upon the beginning of policy reviews by Director Grassi and staff and board as well. It's a
I
long
can help you write that motion, Kathy. If you
Did you think I'd ever stop?
well done. Do I have a motion?
Yes.
You do.
Great.
Kathy, do you want to
Trust-
make that motion and I'll second?
Yeah, I heard Trustee Meierhoff made the motion. I think Trustee Jerch, would you do I have a
I
second?
will be happy to second that. Yes. And I hope you have fun crafting it.
You will. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, the motion carries as stated by Trustee Meierhoff.
Good. That's great, because then we can share that with the board on Tuesday as well, that we're at that point.
We have we have an opportunity to provide committee update for this committee as well. Yes. That sounds great. Do we want to discuss any other business or next steps in terms of reporting to the community resident individually as well?
Well, actually, the report will be posted on the website, so it can be noticed on the website or in the newsletter that this committee has finished its work. The only thing that we didn't discuss, I think we did cover it, but the one thing that came up a few times was signage. I presume that you will address with staff the need, or have already done so, of appropriate signage regarding policy and so forth when the time comes. That was asked a lot.
Yes, and just so that I fully understand, since not having been here previously, this is regarding the computer use policy as adults start using the computer at one of the laptop stations.
Yeah.
And this may have already been shared, but as a person sits down and uses the computer, they are required to approve and agree to our internet policy. And so we've talked a lot about policy today. So let's talk about it a little bit more. Really quickly, I'm going to share my screen. And this is one of the policies that this committee is recommending for review, our wireless internet policy, our wireless policy. And this governs, or not governs, excuse me, but this sets expectations for the use of a library provided wireless network. The reason I bring this up is that our computers are not, they utilize our wireless in order to give access to the internet. So our laptops also have this approval process when they are logging in to use our wireless. Now, it's true also of those that bring in their own devices. In order to securely use our wireless internet, someone has to add our access point to their list of internet options, click on it, and then approve and agree to our policy. So that's what this is. And I would highly recommend, I mean, we've already recommended, but this is what they agree to.
I think,
So-
Renee, the discussion was, we've all sat down and logged on to computers and scrolled real quick and just punched agree and go right into our business. And that's what most people do, I think. So
It is. And then also,
I think we were talking about actual signage. Well, because the carols allowed that, and signage indicating consequences.
and what I could also say is that the general use of the library policy can refer to this policy too. We can cross-reference as we're updating all of our policies together. If we remove the carols, we are limited with signage opportunities. And I would also say that, you know, there could be a conversation about how many times we want to state and post rules in our public space, and how does that create a welcoming environment for everybody? I think that it's both important that we state expectations of people using the library, and also I would just caution us to, defer to a piece of paper to say, and people don't read it, of what is expected, but both should be done. We need to state something so that the library is not liable, and the patron is responsible for the use of the internet, and also create that welcoming environment. And I think we have an opportunity to do that better with, so I'll evaluate the space. There's a large poster on both carols, and I haven't even gotten a chance to really look at it yet, but I don't know what it refers to. I just know that it's like 11 by 17, and it sits on both sides of the computer. So I'll take a look at that, and I agree. I think signage can be improved in many areas of the library. I'll just add one last thing. We do such a great job in our library using every inch of space. But what tends to happen, I've done a lot of various background in architectural and design work. If there's so much visual information, your eye doesn't focus on any one thing. And so oftentimes we're over informing, and there's so much distraction that the things that we really want them to focus on, the information that we want to communicate, they can't see it. So I think there's an opportunity for me to look at that sign that exists there. And then, and in general, there's a lot of interest I already have with our department head team to do a communications walkthrough for the library. But that's related, because I think that people are not seeing the things that we want them to see.
Right.
We talked about the accessible button not being visible, and I think there's a couple reasons for that. But anyway, just wanted to share that too.
Yeah. And the other thing that we overlooked in our reporting and approval of that report is we will want to get legal approval on this. The library always sends a new policy.
Oh, yes.
Before it gets to the board, it's always gone through legal. So.
And that's very standard. Anytime a library approves a new policy, a board approves a new policy, it's reviewed by the lawyer or a legal representation ahead of time. Yep, yeah. That's great. I'm glad we do that.
All righty.
Any other final topics for discussion? This was a great working meeting, everybody. Thank you all.
Thanks.
Hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I will so move. That's Janie.
I'll second. It's Claire.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The meeting of the Special Topics Committee on Monday, February 13th has adjourned at 8:43 p.m.
Okay, thanks everybody.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
all. Thank
Good
you
night,
so
everybody.
much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Janie, good luck with your